everyone, Bill Duvendack here with the monthly astrological preview video for August 2023. So grab your cuppa, get a seat, and let's talk. First of all, August 2023 starts off with a full moon, Leo, Aquarius. So anytime a month starts off with a full moon, it kind of sets the tone for the whole month. And in this case, for the next 31 days, it's going to be quite active. It's not going to be as intense as June or July, but the intensity and the challenges and problems are still going to be there. This full moon is all about finding the balance and the harmony between the self and the other. So you may find that if you focus too much on yourself, it comes back to bite you in the ass when in context of the greater whole. Or if you focus on the greater whole too much, then you don't take care of yourself by default. Also on this day, though, we have a grand trine in earth signs, and this is happening between Mercury, Mars in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, and Pluto in Capricorn. A grand earth trine is a perfect time for manifestation. So those of you that work with manifestation, specifically when it comes to money, health, the job, and all things related to the physical world, this is a great day to do your work, to kind of put that bubble of energy out from the full moon and then diligently work towards it all of August. On the 2nd, we've got a fixed sign T-square. For those of you that have watched the last months of these, you know what a T-square is. It's a very challenging, pressurizing aspect. And this one is occurring between Venus retrograde in Leo, Uranus in Taurus, and the moon in Aquarius. Now, the good news is, since the moon's involved, this is going to be a short-lived, fast-acting T-square. The way to handle this T-square is by practicing discipleship. So living what you believe, shifting what you believe based on your life. So in some ways, this is very much just furrow your brow and charge right through it. Also on the 2nd, we've got Venus retrograde in Leo, trining the north node of the moon, retrograde in Aries. So it's a good time for you to find spiritual guidance by going within and seeing what needs changed, specifically when it comes to expressing your creativity, how you impulsively handle money, and maybe even romance. Also on the 2nd, we've got the moon in Virgo trining Jupiter in Taurus. This is going to be hanging out for a few days until about the 5th or the 6th, depending on where you are on the planet. So that idea of manifestation from the previous day, August 1st, is still in play for about the first week. Now, on the 3rd, the moon in Pisces is conjunct Saturn retrograde. So you may find that limiting spiritual beliefs come to mind. Maybe you recognize how your emotions are preventing you from achieving success. You might become aware of where you're using outdated methods and techniques and beliefs, and it's better to adapt. Also on that day, the sun in Leo is squaring Jupiter in Taurus. So that's going to last for about 5 or 6 days until the 8th or so, depending on where you're at on the planet. And this tells us that during this time, you may find your pride and your ego, or your self-centeredness, your narcissism, whatever it may be, interferes with your ability to achieve prosperity, expansion, and success when it comes to the physical world, specifically money and health. On the 4th, the moon is conjunct or blended with Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So one way to interpret this is on the 3rd, you can see the limits, you can see the problems that you've got to deal with. And then on the 4th, it's a good time to do something about it. So you basically get a day to review and to process. Now on the 4th, that moon-Neptune conjunction are both sextiling Uranus and Taurus. So when you decide to break those outdated habits, you may find it helps you grow easier into your unique, individualized self. So walking to the beat of your own drummer becomes a theme. Now, on the 5th, we've got the Sun in Leo trining the Moon in Aries. So it's a good time to bring those two different parts of yourself together in one cohesive direction. The two parts that we're talking about here is the part of you that still has the beliefs and wants to hold on to them versus the part of you that says they kind of need adapted and kind of need changed to keep up with how we're evolving as a species. This is a topic that has not got a lot of coverage lately, which is the idea that as the species, as society, as culture and civilization continue and evolve, it's up to us to evolve with it. Digging in our heels and protesting it is the fastest way to slow down the growth of the collective. Sometimes you do have to dig in your heels, but that does not necessarily mean being obstinate. It means saying, yeah, I believe this and I used to handle it this way. Now I've got to handle it this way. So it's a shift. It's basic alchemy 101. It's also a sign of maturity and growth. On the 6th, we've got that Venus retrograde in Leo squaring Uranus and Taurus. So you may find the unexpected comes up that interferes with your creativity or interferes with your romance or interferes with just having fun. In other words, you might have a play day plan to go to a park and then you get a load of work dumped on your lap and you can't do that. Also on that day, the moon is conjunct Chiron in Aries, so your wounds may be front and center of your mind. You may find that you see where you're not confident enough in life, or maybe you're too confident in life. And you can see how this particular aspect feeds back into the Venus square Uranus. If you have a plan set in place for a lot of fun and unexpected work comes up, then you might look at it and say, maybe I'm in the wrong line of work. I want my play days to be play days. Or you might look at it and say, I got all this work, I can't get it done. I'm going to go play instead. Or maybe you've got a fun day lined up, you eat your breakfast, and then you get food poisoning. And you realize I gotta quit cutting those corners like I used to when I was younger. On the 7th, we've got the moon in Taurus sextiling Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So it's a good day to make the appropriate changes, especially spiritually, like we've been talking about for the last few days. So you can see a distinct pattern here. The first thing you see is identifying the wounds and identifying where you're stuck in the past on the 3rd. And then it's only on the 7th when you get in a position where things start flowing smoothly after you've assessed what you're dealing with. Now, on the 8th, we've got that moon in Taurus conjunct Jupiter. So your emotions might be stronger than normal. However, it's a good day for epiphanies if you engage in the physical world and try and get out of your own way. We've also got a conjunction there to Uranus in Taurus, which tells us that the way to unlock prosperity and the expansion of consciousness may be through individual expression rather than just going along with the herd. And also on that day, there's a trine to Mars present in Virgo telling us that the way out is through. Sometimes there are no shortcuts. You just have to roll up your sleeves and get to work. On the 9th, the moon in Gemini is squaring Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So those brief conversations you have, whether they're with casual acquaintances or close friends, may kind of irritate some spiritual wounds that have not been updated or addressed. On the 10th, we've got the sun in Leo sextiling the moon in Gemini. So conversations with others on the 9th might bring your focus back to what you need to do to grow spiritually. And then on the 10th, you can easily make the transition into a new paradigm. However, also on that day, the moon in Gemini is squaring the Mercury-Mars conjunction in Virgo. With all the existential stuff I was just talking about, good. You see the spirituality that needs changed within yourself. You see your behavior that needs changed yourself. And now it's time to work. And I don't mean work as in figuring something out. I mean actually getting to work. It could be that work is a distraction. It could be that work is the cure for the rest. Whatever the case may be, this is definitely worth noting because it points out that on the 10th, the realizations come, but then so does the practicality and the practical application of it. Now, on the 11th, the Sun in Leo is conjunct Venus retrograde. So you may be full of love and light, you share it with others, and it immediately gets poo-pooed because you're not speaking the language they're speaking. This is a very profound transit, and the reason it's profound is because Venus is retrograde. So however the 10th and 11th go, know that there is the potential there for life-changing decisions and epiphanies. Now, that Sun-Venus retrograde conjunction in Leo is also sextiling the moon in Gemini, which tells us that as you go through those potentially life-altering changes, communicating them, especially to trusted advisors and friends, would be a good thing to do. On the 12th, we've got the moon in Cancer trining Saturn retrograde in Pisces, so it's a good time to listen to your intuition for spiritual guidance. It's a good time to look at your creativity again and maybe even indulge in it. And on that day, the Sun in Leo is trining Chiron retrograde in Aries. So when you put all of these together, it says the 12th is all about creativity. It's all about emotional fulfillment. It's all about spiritual growth, and all of that emphasis can be a pathway to healing. That's the key. It's not just creativity for the sake of creativity, it's using creativity as a method of healing. On the 13th, we have the moon in Cancer sextiling the Mercury-Mars conjunction in Virgo, so it's a good day to just get things done. Whether it's in the office or the home, or if you work from home, the home office or the home in general. Just when you wake up on the 13th, get ready to get the lead out. Now, also on that day, that moon in Cancer is trining Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So it's a good day to break your bad habits. So you can see that these bad habits that we're talking about now have to do with your work ethic and how you handle the physical world you live in. That moon in Cancer is also squaring the North Node retrograde in Aries. So while you're doing all of this attention to detail and work and focus on the professional life, you might not be able to make a lot of spiritual growth and advancement. And that's okay if you know it going into it, because then you can just put it to the side while you focus on other things. On the 14th, we've got the Sun conjunct that Venus retrograde again, and it's squaring Uranus in Taurus. So you may find that the unexpected comes up and it throws off your creativity or your train of thought. Also on that day, the moon in Leo is opposing Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. This is a key, and this is the first time we're seeing it this month, but it plays a major role for the rest of the month. We have an opposition here in an out-of-sign fashion. Leo and Capricorn do not oppose each other in the zodiac, but this opposition is still present because of the orb of influence. Now, when two planets oppose each other, it's pretty strong because they are diametrically opposed. But when you have an opposition like this where it's out of sign, it means the tension might not be as strong or as profound as it would be otherwise. So in short, for the 14th, don't let your ego get in the way. If you focus on creativity, understand the price that you pay is going to have to do with your occupation and your career. But also on that day, we've got a T-square in fixed signs. We talked about it towards the beginning of the month. It was a major theme in June and July, and it comes up here. But once again, this is a T-square that is out of sign from being technically correct, but it's still in play because of the orb of influence. And the planets involved in this are the moon, Pluto, and the north node of the moon in Aries. So it's all about emotions and how your spiritual growth is being triggered by your emotions, how you use your emotions to achieve spiritual success, but also where your spirituality needs to change in lieu of a new understanding of your emotions. Also on this day, we've got Mars in Virgo trining Uranus in Taurus, and that's going to be in play for several days until about the 18th or so. And this tells us it's a good time to readjust your work routine based on what's most productive and effective for you, even if others don't understand. So yes, walking to the beat of your own drummer is what we're talking about here, but in the context and the confines of your daily work. So this is not an excuse to be an individual and rebel against the status quo to the degree that you perform self-sabotage, but rather this is a time to say, I know what needs to be done, it will get done, but I'm going to do it my way, not your way. So as long as you produce the results, you're on the right track. But if you use that line of thought as an excuse or a reason to be a rebel without a clue, it's going to work against you. On the 15th, the moon in Leo is conjunct that Venus retrograde, and both are conjunct the sun. And all of that activity in Leo is squaring Uranus in Taurus. So you may find this is too much of a good thing. With the 15th, with all that emphasis in Leo, it's saying it's all about you. I. Whether it's creative and fun, whether it's romantic, whether it's pushing ahead on projects that you put your willpower in, it doesn't matter. It's all about you. But that square to Uranus and Taurus says, yeah, you might be flying high in your mind when it comes to creativity, when it comes to all things related to Leo, but there's probably going to be some unexpected event in the physical world that's going to yank you back down to earth. And if that happens, don't get upset, because that's what it's supposed to do. Or perhaps it's the fact that there's so much emphasis on creativity, you lose track of what needs to be done. So keep your mind clear and open. August 16th brings us the new moon in Leo, and all of that is forming a square or a challenging aspect to Uranus and Taurus. So you may find that while you engage in your creativity and your romance and executing the plans of your willpower, that something unexpected comes up in the physical world to throw you off the rails. But all of this is trining the north node of the moon retrograde in Aries, which means that an alchemical principle is in play here. And that principle is that when you're flying high with your creativity in the physical world, pulls you back to earth to focus on these things, that's not necessarily working against your spirituality or against your will. Figuring out how to bring the spiritual into the physical is part of the biggest life lessons that all of us are here to do in this incarnation. Now, on the 17th, we've got the moon in Virgo trining Jupiter in Taurus. So it's a good day to get the lead out. It's a good time to focus on your daily work life, your career, your occupation, and the seeds that you are sowing for further expansion and prosperity down the road. Now, on the 18th, we've got the moon conjunct Mercury, conjunct Mars in Virgo, and all of that is trining Uranus in Taurus. So there, the major themes started more or less with the new moon on the 16th continues, in that it's time to focus on the workplace, the career, the occupation, your daily work routines, and still finding a way to be true to your individualized, unique self. There's another piece to this, which is that all of that, specifically the moon, Mercury, Mars conjunction in Virgo, is opposing Neptune retrograde in Pisces. And then you've got that Uranus and Taurus in effect. And this tells us that in order to make these goals, you're going to have to break your own bad habits. You're going to have to get out of your own way. On the 19th, we've got the Sun in Leo trining the north node of the moon retrograde in Aries. That's going to be in play till the 22nd. So this is really what you've been working for. The theme of the last few days has been harmonizing your creativity with your responsibilities. And now on the 19th, you might get an epiphany or a realization of how that dance propels your spiritual growth and good. Now, the moon is in Libra on that day, and it's trining Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So we see more emphasis on aspects with out of sign planets and more of an orb of influence, which diffuses the energy. And in this case, the moon in Libra trining Pluto retrograde in Capricorn tells us that it is a good day to reach out, professionally speaking, and make the connections that you need to make in order to achieve success. On the 20th, we've got Mars conjunct Mercury in Virgo. The Mars, I'm sure Mars would like that. That conjunction is opposing that Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So it's saying continue to work, continue to focus on your professional life and your daily work routine, but put the spirituality and the creativity on the back burner. After all, if you think about everything that I said here, that creativity has been a strong force for the last several days, and now it's time to put it aside. This transition has been slowly happening over the course of about 4 or 5 days, where it's going from creativity, shifting into harmonizing it with the business world, the practical world, and now we find just the straight up message, focus on the work, put the creativity aside. Whereas approximately a week before, it was finding the balance between the two. Now it's all about just plain shifting gears. Also on that day, we've got the moon in Libra sextiling the Venus retrograde in Leo. So it is a good day to use creative problem solving. So not necessarily indulging in your artistic endeavors and causes, but rather figuring out how to talk to the people you need to talk to achieve professional success. On the 21st, the moon in Libra is opposing the north node of the moon retrograde in Aries. So your diplomacy, your desire to get along well with others might create tension and strife when it comes to your spiritual growth going forward. You may also find if you're currently indecisive about things spiritually now, it works against you. Sometimes the message is as simple as pick a direction and go with it. The moon in Libra is also squaring Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. This tells us that all of what I said for the 21st is actually a cardinal T-square aspect pattern. So we see the return of the T-square here. But if you'll notice, we're already to the 21st and there have been no grand crosses. And this is why I said with August, you can expect to see a lot of what you saw in June and July, just to a lesser potent degree. So the 21st may be full of challenges, but the way to work with them is to let your spirituality be your guide. On the 22nd, the moon in Scorpio is opposing Jupiter in Taurus. So avoid impulse buys. Avoid your emotions interfering with your ability to get work done. Both of those are squaring the Venus retrograde in Leo, which means it's a fixed sign T-square. So we go from a cardinal T-square the day before to a fixed one now. On the 21st, it was all about letting your spirituality be your guide. Now the 22nd gives you an opportunity to live that. And the moon in Scorpio on that day is trining Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So this is all about emotional and spiritual initiations and reviewing and changing what you're doing. On the 23rd, we've got a very eventful day. So if there was one day of the month that I would say put on your radar for being very turbulent, it would be the evening of the 22nd, morning of the 23rd, depending on where you're at on the planet. The 23rd is the moon in Scorpio opposing Uranus and Taurus. So we see that your emotional intensity and focus may prevent you from handling the unexpected things that come up through daily life. But we also have the sun moving into Virgo, and that always creates a kerfuffle. Mercury in Virgo on that day is also stationing retrograde. The sun in Virgo is opposing Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and that's going to be in play for about a week until the 29th. So let's break this down, because on the 23rd, we've got the sun moving into Virgo. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Also on that day, Mercury in Virgo is beginning to retrograde, which it will be until mid-September. A lot of Mercury action on that day. So watch for communication issues, watch for adaptability issues, watch for manual dexterity issues, specifically in the workplace. And all of this is coming along to say, hey, here's another area of your spirituality that you are outdated with, and it's time to change. So the 23rd may be pretty rocky. It may feel like an entire Mercury retrograde period is condensed down into one day. Or it could be rocky in that you just get hit with one thing after another, and it's all short-lived, but it's all problems. On the 24th, we have the sun in Virgo squaring the moon in Sagittarius. So watch for the work responsibilities interfering with your ability to travel or practice your spirituality or speak your truth. And all of that is squaring Saturn retrograde in Pisces, which turns the whole situation into a mutable T-square. So you see, over the course of 4 days, we go from a cardinal sign T-square to a fixed sign T-square to a mutable sign T-square. So the potency and the intensity diminishes on each one of those days. And now the lesson of the 24th is all about blossoming. And when I say blossoming here, I'm thinking more like resurrection, coming back to life, adapting. Also on that day, we've got the Venus retrograde in Leo squaring Jupiter and Taurus. So you may find that the Venus issues that are going on in your life right now are interfering with your ability to make long-term goals and plans, especially financially and health-wise. The 25th, we see Mars in Virgo opposing Neptune retrograde in Pisces. This again draws attention to outdated spiritual beliefs you may have or outdated spiritual practices, and tells us that, yeah, you might believe something spiritually, but how do you bring it down into physical results? If you can do it, great. If you can't, you might want to revisit that belief and kick it to the curb. Also on that day, the moon in Sagittarius is trining Chiron in Aries. So it is a good day to speak your truth in order to heal. It's a good day to do some traveling, which might lead to healing on down the road. On the 26th, we've got the sun in Virgo trining the moon in Capricorn. So it's all about laying the foundation that you couldn't do the day before. The moon in Capricorn is sextiling Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and I like this because it's a safety net. For a couple of weeks this month, I've been talking about how there are certain triggers to make you review what you believe spiritually and how you're putting it into practice in the daily world. If you get to this point and you're like, I still got nothing, Bill, I'm confused, I don't see things, On the 26th, watch for epiphanies for all that to make sense. Now, there's also a grand Earth trine on that day between the Sun, Moon, and the North Node of the Moon in Aries. So we see an out-of-sign aspect pattern here. Again, this particular grand trine is all about taking a look at your situation and see how you can build from what you've got now. So in other words, you've got the foundation. Now's a good day to assess the foundation, but also know that what you're addressing, you're not going to see results from anytime soon. This is deferred gratification. Now on the 27th, Mars enters into Libra, and the Moon in Capricorn is squaring Chiron in Aries. So number one, watch your temper, the 26th and the 27th. Number two, do your best to avoid accidents. Number three, do your best to avoid pissing people off with your conversation. You may be right, but if you roll it out one way, it could be well received. But if you roll it out a different way, it could just make somebody angry and become counterproductive. So it's all about diplomacy. And taking charge with these themes will irritate wounds that you have been trying to heal that have to do with your sense of being and sense of self. On the 28th, the Moon is in Aquarius and it's conjunct Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So your emotions may be stronger than normal, which means have some sort of outlet for that extra energy. And that same Moon in Aquarius is trining Mars in Libra. So have fun with your friends. Just keep your temper in check. Not only your own temper, but also watch your words so you don't trigger the temper of others. However, on the 28th, we've also got Uranus and Taurus stationing retrograde, where it's going to be for several months. So watch for the unexpected. On the 28th, there's a lot of air activity here. The Moon is in Aquarius. Mars is in Libra. Pluto's in Capricorn, but it's at the tail end, so it's just about as much influenced by Aquarius as it is Capricorn. And we've got Uranus, the ruling planet of Aquarius, stationing retrograde in an earth sign of Taurus, so it's all air and earth, mostly air with a splash of earth. The reason this matters is it says on the 28th, it's all about the Aquarius, baby. The sun may be in Virgo, but it's all about taking Aquarian approaches to deal with yourself and interacting with others. So expect the unexpected in your daily life. Watch out for problems with the electricity or the internet. And if those things come up, just focus on your friends. Go blow off the day. Have some fun. On the 29th, we've got that Venus retrograde in Leo opposing the Moon in Aquarius. So romantic situations may be problematic. You may want to spend a lot of money in the name of emotional satisfaction, but your bank account says no. And we have a square to Jupiter in Taurus on that day, which turns what I said about Venus opposing the Moon into a fixed sign T-square. So you notice we had several days off between T-squares here. We did not have that in June. We had it in July to a lesser extent, but it was still more prevalent than it was in August. So you can see that the graph here is telling us that over the span of 90 days, June through the end of August, the pressure that was there in the beginning is diminishing by the end. But the challenges now have to do with staying the course. On the 30th, we've got the Moon in Pisces conjunct Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So watch out for emotional triggers. Yes, go within and see what you need to change when it comes to processing your emotions, but not to the degree where you are not being true to yourself. On that same 30th, we've got Mercury retrograde in Virgo trining Jupiter in Taurus. So you might find Mercury retrograde issues come up that you have to revisit, specifically in the workplace, whether it's conversations to have with others in person or emails or anything mercurial of that nature. And when those things happen, because of those things, you may have to step back, review things that you've been doing, and see the appropriate changes. So it's kind of like something unexpected comes up with the Mercury retrograde on the 30th, and you're like, oh crap, I got to go back and deal with this. Then when you go back and deal with it, you're like, oh, actually, it's a good thing I circled back and dealt with this, because I found that I can increase my gain a little bit more than I thought. Not all retrogrades are bad. Sometimes when we go within or we revisit things, we discover the gold hoard of the dragon, and we didn't even know it was there. And finally, on the 31st, we've got that moon in Pisces now opposing Mercury retrograde in Virgo. So you may not be able to communicate your emotions effectively. Your creativity may be stalled, but it's not because you're not creative. It's because you can't figure out how to bring it down into a tangible expression. And also on that day, that opposition is sextiling Jupiter in Taurus. So yes, the creativity's there. You may have a problem communicating it to others, but it's all good. You will figure it out. It may be September 1st or 2nd, but things will work out for the best, and they'll put you in a fantastic position for the future. So yes, by the end of August, there are 7 planets retrograde. It's funny, I've been on social media and have not seen any memes about the 6 planets that are in retrograde now. It seems like, could it be people cherry pick what they get upset about when factual evidence says otherwise? Anyway, thank you to Adam Knox and the Cult of You for this. Make sure to watch out for the masterclass that we are going to be doing in the near future. Daily horoscopes are still going out all over social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. Monthly horoscopes are on the website. Make sure you're watching Halls of Tarot, engineered by Graybeard and done by myself. On YouTube, just simply @Halls of Tarot for a daily taroscope. And until we chat again, may we all receive blessings of good health, prosperity, and success as we move forward in the next month of our lives. Blessings.
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk, a bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special. My father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe, in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed to show us the way home.